Hello there, and welcome to this Tuesday edition of the show. So glad to have you, especially on a day like today. This day, what is going on is what this medium is made for. So I appreciate your patronage, whether you're listening on your radio, online, or through the Extra Sports 1300 app, or maybe you're watching the show live on our social media platforms. I do sincerely appreciate it. And because today is one of those days that this medium was made for, please take advantage of it. 719-247-1313. Let's interact. Let's talk about this. I would say veritable cornucopia of sports topics. No veritable cornucopia. We got one thing, a lot of layers, a lot of different avenues to go down, but one story. That the Denver Nuggets, with 3 games left in the regular season, have told the Memphis Grizzlies, hold my beer, and have let go not only Calvin Booth, but Michael Malone. And let's be honest about this. Calvin Booth was probably going to be gone. Right? We knew this. And letting him go today, what's he going to do? Pull out draft scout? Like, it's really letting go Michael Malone. That's really the story here. Calvin Booth was going to be gone, and even if they let him go right now, it would be a little odd, but it wouldn't be as shocking as firing Michael Malone. So the why of all of it. I think there's a few different ways that you could go. There is no doubt that this roster has not been optimized around Michael Malone. Or Michael Malone. Around Nikola Jokic. Okay, and that's why Calvin Booth was going to be gone. They had to bring in somebody that could build around Jokic in a better way than Calvin Booth did. So what is the best way to be able to attract the best general manager candidate that you can get? Somebody that will look at this team with a critical eye, have no ties whatsoever to any of these players, be able to just look at them as assets and say, can I move off of these guys? Should I move off of these guys? None of those lingering feelings of that championship. You're bringing in somebody new. What is the best way to do that? To accomplish the goal of having the best general manager candidate you can get, evaluate this roster, and make the tough decisions. Is it having Michael Malone or not having Michael Malone? Because more than anything else, general managers, they love picking their own coaches. Okay, so you got that. You can attract a general manager candidate and say you can decide who your head coach is. Michael Malone has a great affinity for a few players on this roster. And because of the power that Michael Malone has been able to accumulate, and let's say this, probably rightly so, right? You're a title-winning coach. You've won a lot of games. Certainly, you have the right to have a little bit more say in things. Now, I think there was probably too much say coming from Michael Malone, which is part of this. But he's deserved to be a louder voice, given the success that he has had. So if, let's just throw out a hypothetical, General Manager X comes in and says, I want to move Jamal Murray. This guy, 4 out of the last 5 years, has not been healthy when this team has needed him the most. It's nothing to do with his ability. We know what he is when he is right, but he is not right more than he's right, and we got to move off of him. You don't think Michael Malone's going to push back against that? Because it's not just Calvin Booth as a human being, or like he was the assistant general manager and he got promoted. It's not so much about who Calvin Booth is. It's just that when Tim Connolly left, that was Michael Malone's opportunity to take more power, have more say in the organization, because he would be longer tenured. He would be more accomplished than whatever general manager came in. So the same thing could probably be said about the next guy. And Michael Malone would be looking at it like, well, hang on a minute. I've been here for a decade. I've won a title. And I don't want to trade Jamal Murray. And then you are right back in the same position you have been all season long, with Calvin Booth and Michael Malone clashing over what needs to be done with this organization, because that's the backdrop of all of this. You have a general manager and a head coach who could not see eye to eye on how to keep the championship window open and how to become the dynasty that Michael Malone promised the Nuggets would become. That's what's behind all of this. But there's a world where you could fix the problem if you're Josh Kroenke by simply letting Calvin Booth walk. But I think he knows that doesn't ultimately fix the problem, because anybody you bring in, Michael Malone, if he doesn't agree with the direction that this new general manager wants to take the team, he's going to fight him on it. And Josh Kroenke doesn't want to go through that again. He wants to have a more harmonious brain trust that is locked in, that the vertical integration of it all, the synergy of it all. We have a GM and a head coach. They agree on the direction. They agree on what this team needs moving forward. And if this new general manager, and you don't know because you haven't interviewed anybody, but let's say this general manager says, I want to get rid of Jamal Murray, is Michael Malone going to stand in the way of that and create the same environment that you have had for the last year? Maybe 2 years, if we're really thinking about it, since this team won a title. Michael Malone and Calvin Booth have clashed over what it's going to take to sustain that success. So you can give the new general manager carte blanche to hire whatever coach he wants and to be able to make any moves that he sees fit. That's a practical basketball reason for letting both of these guys go. But I don't think it's just that. Back on, and I have the date right here. Avid listeners of the program will remember Monday, December 9th. I was on this very radio program. And I said the fact that the Denver Nuggets got blown out by Cleveland, only to lose the very next game against the Washington Wizards, felt to me like a team, a locker room that was not really locked in with their head coach. to get absolutely obliterated by one of the NBA's best teams and to have very little fight to bounce back the next game to beat the lowly Wizards, that was a red flag for me. And at various times throughout this season, I have again revisited the idea that Michael Malone may be losing the locker room. And you have a 4-game stretch here that these are all vitally important games that Michael Malone has pointed out since March 31st, how important these games would be and what fate would befall the Denver Nuggets if they did not turn it around and start winning basketball games. They would find themselves in the play-in. And in that way, Michael Malone deserves credit because he was prophetic, because they are a half a game out of the play-in right now. But it really doesn't seem like the team responded or heeded his words. Did Michael Malone lose this Nuggets locker room? I've been wondering it since early December. I think there's a practical basketball reason for just cleaning house. And there's also something you could put just on Michael Malone. Because the cleaning house part of it, it really goes back to Calvin Booth, right? It more poorly reflects on him more than anything else, right? You had a bad GM that messed up this roster, and you got to bring in someone to fix it, and it's just easier if he can also pick his head coach. That's not talking about whatever shortcomings Michael Malone had. And that's why I say it can't just be that. There's the basketball reason for a clean break, a new brain trust at Ball Arena. But then there's also Michael Malone on his own looking like he's lost this locker room. And it is one of the unfortunate facts of sports that even the most accomplished coaches, their message can start to fall on deaf ears. That players can be tired of hearing the same voice over and over again. And Michael Malone's voice can be abrasive, right? He could get on them a little bit. So if you want to extend this to the players and say that they bear some responsibility for what happened today, I don't think you're wrong in doing that. But it is something that happens to coaches in every sport. Long tenured coaches start to lose the room. But then there's some X's and O's things. There's some player development things. Michael Malone has had Nikola Jokic for a while now and still has not been able to figure out any kind of system to put in place to be able to make the bench minutes anything other than worse than a root canal. He can't figure out what to do with the bench to allow Nikola Jokic to rest for 2 dang seconds. One of the biggest issues with this Denver Nuggets team is their perimeter defense. Michael Malone is, by trade, a defensive-minded head coach. He has not been able to figure out a way throughout the course of the entirety of the season to get the Nuggets to play better defense. And I do believe that some of these young players would be better than they are right now had Michael Malone bought into the vision of Calvin Booth. So when you make a decision like this, it's never one thing. It's never, oh, this is just basketball. It's also never just personality clashes. Right? There have been some pretty high-profile examples of athletes, coaches, front office, not getting along, but figuring out a way to make it all work so they can win. I think you have a confluence of events here and a bunch of different things going wrapped up all into one that has been festering throughout the course of this entire season and is now culminating with a 4-game losing streak at the most inopportune time. And this is why Josh Kroenke has decided that he would like his organization to move forward without Calvin Booth and without Michael Malone. So that's the why. And the why, actually, even though it's multi-layered and multifaceted, that's actually the easy part. You've been watching it. We just had this very same conversation about a lot of the things we're going to discuss today yesterday. I said yesterday that no one would be safe if the Denver Nuggets continued down this path. And I have pointed out multiple times throughout the season that Michael Malone isn't as safe as people believe he is. So the why in all of this, that's the easy part. The hard part, why now? Why are the Nuggets doing this now? Get into that coming up next here on Extra Sports 1300. The Denver Nuggets have shocked the NBA world by saying goodbye to both Calvin Booth and Michael Malone with just 3 games left in the regular season. And I have not all the time in the world, but I have a 3-hour radio program at my disposal, and I will get out all my thoughts on this Tuesday. Your time is far more precious and far more limited. So I want to get to your thoughts as soon as they come in at 719-247-1313. You can call or text it in. Dutch has called in, and he is first to react to today's news. Dutch, Fly Eagles Fly, how are you?
What in the ever-loving hell are they doing? 3 games left? Like, you could have done this earlier in the season, or at least waited and see to see what would actually happen in the playoffs. I have zero clue what's going on. Oh, by the way, yeah. We are the champions, my friends. Sing with me, Ryan.
I will not, but by the way, just to mention, coming up here in a couple weeks, we're going to have our drive time mock draft. I would be honored if you would draft for the Eagles.
Oh, hell yeah.
All right. I'll put you down. I will.
You got my number. Just text me the info.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll answer your question, but in long form. I don't want to hold you. So any parting thoughts, and then I will get to what you are asking.
Nuggets, but how about?
Oh,
I didn't call you the next day because I was too drunk. So, but anyways, love you, miss you. Tell the kids I said hi.
All right, sounds good, buddy. Thanks. That's Dutch. There he goes. Want to get one other text because this is we got from both sides here. Alex says, I love the move. This team has been playing terrible down the stretch. They have played absolutely no defense. Michael Malone's rotations were absolute garbage. The Nuggets keep getting up double digits, and then they rest all their stars at the same time to start the second quarter. Then our sorry excuse for a bench blows the lead. That has been the story game after game after game this year, and Malone has done nothing to adjust or change. Seems like the Bulls are just taking 3-point target practice, and we're letting them. This is not a popular move, not to move the fans are going to love, but a move that needed to happen. All right. So we got one on each side. But I think, again, the bigger question is why now? Because I can go all day with anybody on why both of these guys had to go. But the why now is the fascinating part of it. The why now is the shocking part of it. To Dutch's call. So allow me. You have made up your mind through all of the confluence of events that I just mentioned. You have made up your mind that Michael Malone has lost the locker room to some degree, that you want to bring in a general manager that will be unimpeded by Michael Malone's loyalties to any player on the roster. You want to start fresh, all that kind of stuff. Why you do it now, to me, is simple. You can't risk Michael Malone having success. And I go back to the Grizzlies. If the Grizzlies decided this is not our guy, and you could quarrel with that or whatever, but the Memphis Grizzlies a couple weeks ago clearly decided that Taylor Jenkins was not their guy. And if you decide that, you can't risk that coach taking that team into the playoffs and having success. Because if that happens, then your job of firing him becomes much more difficult. And what is success for the Denver Nuggets? We would all, I think, view success differently for the Denver Nuggets. But let me spin you a scenario. Let me get this out of the way. Same with Memphis. The Denver Nuggets, despite whatever shine that Josh Kroenke will put on this move, in fact, he said the goal is still to win a title. And I think that's very particular wording. The goal. We all have goals in our lives. Some more aspirational than others. My goal can be to win American Idol, if that's even still a thing. But that doesn't mean I'm going to get there. And in a quiet moment by myself, I'm going to realize that I cannot sing. And even though I would love to win American Idol and it's a goal of mine, it's never going to happen. So I will, for the second time in this current sports season, put myself on the line by proclaiming that the Nuggets have zero chance of winning a title. Just already going in that direction. I was already not high on the possibility of them winning a title, but just so everybody knows where I'm at on this, the Denver Nuggets will not go and win a title after all of this. So your goal can be to win the title, but is your expectation that you're going to win a title? Because if your expectation is that you're going to win a title, then why do you fire Michael Malone? Clearly, it's not as bad as we all think it is if you still think absolutely the Denver Nuggets can win a title. So this is the Denver Nuggets saying we're not winning this year. But that doesn't mean there's not some level of success that would make Josh Kroenke's job more difficult. Let me spin you a scenario. Because all sorts of different seedings are out there for the Denver Nuggets right now. Let's say, because I'm still not entirely sold on the idea that there are more than two teams that would mean the ultimate demise in the certain demise of the Denver Nuggets in the playoffs. I still think it might be just OKC and Minnesota. It might be. Starting to waver on that a little bit. But I know there are two teams that I don't see how the Denver Nuggets can beat in this postseason. Let's say they avoid both of them till the Western Conference Final. You going to fire Michael Malone after he made the Western Conference Final a year after they got bounced? He improved the team. They got better. He did a better job. He got them to the Western Conference Final. That's not the ultimate goal, right? The goal is to win a title. But that would make it much more difficult to let Michael Malone go. And you want to talk about shock now? What about shock in a couple of months when the Nuggets take OKC to a 7-game series, lose on a Shea buzzer beater, and then they're like, yeah, Michael Malone, you're done. You can't risk Michael Malone having any success. And it's not even really any faith that they have in Michael Malone. I think it's faith in Nikola Jokic. At any moment, this guy could go absolute God mode and lay waste to the Western Conference. Every time we try to put a ceiling on what Nikola Jokic can do, he busts right through it. So if I'm Josh Kroenke and I've made up my mind that I don't want Michael Malone to be my head coach moving forward for a variety of reasons, I can't risk him having success. Or more accurately, I can't risk Nikola Jokic going absolutely crazy in the Western Conference playoffs and getting to the Western Conference Final. Because then the narrative is, well, Michael Malone figured it out. As bad as everybody feels about the Denver Nuggets right now, they righted the ship and they just lost to a team that has been lapping the field in the Western Conference all season long. There's no shame in losing to OKC. You can't risk him having success. Or I need to really rephrase that and not put it that way ever. You can't risk the Nuggets having success because then it's harder to make your move. Now, that's the why now. You've made up your mind, and anything from here on out, you're risking making your job much harder. But should Michael Malone, with everything he has done for this organization, get one last chance to save his job? We'll get into that with your texts and calls at 719-247-1313. You'll hear from Josh Kroenke coming up in a little bit as he sat down with Vic Lombardi to discuss why he made the decision today to let both Calvin Booth and Michael Malone go. It's semantics, but Calvin Booth, we're not extending your contract, so you can go ahead and go. Michael Malone, years left on his deal, is getting fired. Your reaction at 719-247-1313. Daniel calling into the show wants to react to the news. Daniel, fire away.
Yeah, Ryan, thank you for having me. I was on my way back from college, and this was stunning. And I don't really think there's anything in the history of Kroenke sports that really prepares you for it. You know, they've been very patient with whether it was with Sakic with the Avs, you know, when they had those terrible seasons, and they let them stick around and ride it out. And obviously we saw the good side of that, or whether it's with Mikel Arteta and Arsenal, or whether it's with McVay and the Rams. So I think it would have to be something pretty serious to see what we saw today. And going back to what you said about losing the locker room, I think something that watching the Nuggets this year I saw is that there's not as much effort as there has been in past years, and there's been some effort problems this year. And I definitely feel like that could be, you know, something as a part of the loss of the locker room. So thank you for having me on, and hopefully we figure this out, man.
Yeah, great call, Daniel, for your first one. Call more often, for sure. You know, Daniel makes a great point. Let me go to his second, the last thing he mentioned first. Defense, rebounding. So much of those two things are effort. Right? And you could make the argument like, hey, effort, that's on the players. Bosses exist for a reason. Some days we may not feel like our bosses are necessary, but every once in a while, a boss becomes necessary, either to dangle a carrot or to be more stick than carrot. And it is part of Michael Malone's job to get this team working at the level that Daniel points out they have played in the past and don't seem to be this year. That is part of Michael Malone's job description. That can be characterized as losing the locker room, that this team does not want to play as hard for Michael Malone. And I know as I say that, you're thinking, man, is that a referendum on the players? Yes. Yes. Their time will come. It's that old saying, the coach is easier to fire than the players. Well, that doesn't mean that the players aren't fireable. This is going to be an offseason of significant change. There is no way. I'll just put this prediction out there, and it's my most mild take that I have, because I think this is obvious. Either Michael Porter or Jamal Murray will be gone. That's easy. One of those two will be gone. I think maybe both. I said this yesterday. This is an organizational failure from top to bottom, what is happening with the Denver Nuggets. Just 2 years ago, Michael Malone talked about a dynasty. He uttered the phrase dynasty. And I said when he did that, he did the Nuggets and himself no favors. Because that is not something you say after you win your first title. As a coach, your first title as an organization. Like, look, if JJ Redick wins a title this year and talks about dynasty, then you go, okay, like, that's a bold proclamation, but it's also the Lakers. Things tend to work out for them. But the Nuggets organization that has been looked at more as a laughingstock than a success or anything to be revered, for the coach after they won one title to throw out the word dynasty. he put it on the line, and that's part of Michael Malone's appeal, right? He's not afraid to tell you what's on his mind. I also think it can work against you. Like in this case, you going the other direction, whatever the opposite direction of dynasty is, which is the direction that the Nuggets are going. And when you are somebody that is always willing to say what's on your mind, that's how you rub players the wrong way and they stop playing for you. But make no mistake about it, the players have to own this. And there are going to be players this offseason. Michael Porter talked about it before the season even started, that they were going to be gone if it didn't work out. And he was talking about himself. You think Michael Porter doesn't understand what is said about him, where he is in the pecking order of the organization? So absolutely, let's not for 1 second pin all of this on Calvin Booth and Michael Malone and say the players, you're good. They're not. They have to take accountability for this. And when they do speak to the media, you're going to hear a lot of it. Probably not from Russell Westbrook, but everyone else, I'm sure, are going to take a lot of accountability for what happened. And they should. And Russell Westbrook should. But he's not going to. But the question I keep pondering, I know why. I kind of get why now. And Josh, when you hear from Josh Kroenke coming up at the top of the hour, you will get more of insight into what he's saying. And from what I've seen so far, what he has said aligns very much of what I've been saying for the last 46 minutes. But there's this other part of it where you say, yes, things are going poorly. Yes, you can make a case that Michael Malone has lost the locker room. Yes, it would make more sense to attract the best general manager candidate you can to just clean house and let him take over and put his own coach in place. I could throw out all of that stuff. But what much of the world outside of Colorado is talking about, because I see it all up and down my timeline this afternoon, Michael Malone is one of the winningest coaches in the NBA. He is one of the longest tenured coaches in the NBA. He is one of only a few coaches in the NBA that have won an NBA title. So even if we agree 100% on everything I have said for the past now 47 minutes, isn't there some part of this where you go, shouldn't he get an opportunity? If anybody in this league, any head coach right now in the league deserves one last shot at saving his job, shouldn't it be Michael Malone? And I understand that. I think this speaks to how long this has been festering. If you take nothing else away from the news today, know this. Josh Kroenke, to Daniel's point about the way they operate, they do not make rash decisions. Now, you could say that some of their decisions don't work out, but they ponder them. They spend time with them. They're patient. And their patience has been rewarded by both teams that call Ball Arena home. So Josh Kroenke making this decision today is not knee-jerk. And it's not made without any feeling whatsoever towards Michael Malone. Josh Kroenke loves Michael Malone. I don't know if I should make that past tense, but I know that Josh Kroenke and Michael Malone's relationship was great. He did not make this based on a 4-game losing streak at the end of the season. This 4-game losing streak is the culmination of what this season has been. What the last it's been almost a full calendar year. Think about the last calendar year for the Denver Nuggets. You collapse in Game 7. Right? You don't make any moves really to improve your basketball team, but yet expect it to be improved. That's neither here nor there. You get various points throughout the season where you wonder, the one thing you could always bank on with Michael Malone's teams, and it was part of what I said on December 10th or 9th or whatever it was, you can always count on the Denver Nuggets to respond after a loss. And they got their teeth kicked in by the Cavaliers, and 2 nights later, they lost to the lowly Wizards. You don't think Josh Kroenke saw that? And he has been, for the last year, dealing with a GM and a head coach that have been bickering back and forth about the best direction for this organization. Calvin Booth says, play the kids. Michael Malone says, bleep off. I'm playing Russell Westbrook. I'm not playing Peyton Watson in the Timberwolves series. I'd rather play DeAndre Jordan than Zeke Naji. There have been reports about how the two of these gentlemen will talk behind one another's back to other people and complain about them. They did not see eye to eye on the vision that for this team to sustain success. They got into it. And Josh Kroenke was absolutely sick of it. So even though the move may look from the outside like, wow, this is a really rash decision, you know better. You know better. You're in the weeds just like I am. You've watched this team. You know what's been going on. You know what the backdrop of this season is, this eternal struggle for how to support a generational talent in Nikola Jokic. Calvin Booth sees it one way. Michael Malone sees it another. I have little doubt that these young players would be better if they had a coach that believed that it was the right path forward to make the Nuggets a dynasty, to play them. Michael Malone doesn't want to. Now, that's not to say that all these guys would hit and the Nuggets would have won last year and will win this year. Calvin Booth made mistakes. He swung and missed. He swung and missed on multiple picks. Okay, but really what it's about is the fact that these two could never get on the same page and they fought about it. And that's not the culture that Josh or his father want to have in any of their organizations. So this is not knee-jerk. It seems like it's out of pattern with this ownership. But I think if you really think about it and you really think about what the last calendar year has been for the Denver Nuggets, you would say it's not so much of a knee-jerk reaction. And to, again, the point of should Michael Malone have gotten one more shot at saving his job. It speaks to how, for lack of a better phrase, sick of it Josh Kroenke was. And we don't know. We don't know what's happened behind closed doors. Could there have been some kind of come to Jesus with everybody in the organization a couple of months back? Could they have warned Michael Malone, like, hey, you and Calvin need to play nice. You need to play the young guys. Could there have been a blow up? I don't know if some of the stuff from behind the scenes is going to come to light. But if Josh Kroenke is making this kind of a move, trust me, it is not based on a simple 4-game losing streak, as bad as this is. There had to have been a lot of stuff, a lot of it you've seen, some of it you haven't. And maybe the most important things you have not seen. And that's why, in Josh Kroenke's mind, Michael Malone does not deserve a chance to save his job. And in their mind, they gave him opportunities. This season was the opportunity. You ran Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic into the ground, refused to play the young players, and it ended up costing you in Game 7 on the biggest of stages. And we came together after the season and we said, we got to be in lockstep. Everybody said that. Booth has to see eye to eye with Malone. Malone the other way around. Josh Kroenke. They all got to be in lockstep. And they said all that in the moment, but clearly they didn't live up to it throughout this season. And you're seeing more of Michael Malone's familiar patterns. And probably behind the scenes, you're seeing a coach that has taken on a lot of power in that organization, that is wielding it at a level that doesn't sit well with Josh Kroenke and is not allowing Calvin Booth to try and do his job. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, you will hear from Josh Kroenke in his own words why he made the shocking decision to let both Calvin Booth and Michael Malone go with just 3 games left in the regular season. Welcome in Drive Time Sports. In this auspicious occasion, the Denver Nuggets saying goodbye to both Calvin Booth and Michael Malone with just 3 games left in the regular season, the playoffs on the horizon. Why now, and where they go from here. Appreciate you tuning in. Reminder, you can watch the show live if you have not taken advantage of this already. Maybe look into it. Our social media platforms at Extra Sports 1300. You can watch and listen to the show on a daily basis, and you can even, it's kind of a one-stop shop, send in your thoughts on the day's topics as well. Get to your thoughts at 719-247-1313. You can call or text them in. I have plenty more thoughts on this Tuesday, of course, but just a little while ago, Vic Lombardi sat down with Josh Kroenke to ask him why he is making this shocking decision now. Couple of things there. Trends throughout the season that winning has masked. And it goes back to what I said last hour about, through Nikola Jokic, all things are possible, including the Denver Nuggets making a deep run in the playoffs and making it more difficult for Josh Kroenke to make this decision. You heard him there say that they had made this decision, that they were going to move on from both of these guys once the season came to an end. And if you've decided on that, and Michael Malone weaves some magic, or Nikola Jokic does Nikola Jokic things, or you get a favorable draw, or any number of things that can happen in the postseason, and then you're not able to make the move that you have decided you want to make. And I think it's when he talks about trends throughout the season, I think it's the areas of this team that are the weakest, which is defense, Michael Malone's supposed specialty. It is rebounding, both of which reflect on a coach's ability to get his team energized for that particular game. I think this team's inability at times to bounce back after losses, which has been a staple of Michael Malone's tenure. And I think it's telling that you're not getting an outpouring of support from Nuggets players. Now, the most important guy, the guy you want to hear from, isn't on social media. And we'll get into the Nikola Jokic of it all coming up. But the face of the Nuggets franchise, the guy you want to hear from most in times like this, is not somebody to give his opinion on a platform like social media. He's not LeBron James. He's not going to go public with a camera in front of him every time something happens so he can give his opinion. But have you noticed, and look, I've been talking for the last hour plus. I'm not going to pretend that I've scoured the internet looking for Nuggets players. But I would think that in just my normal scrolling through social media during the break, given the people that I follow, I would see some retweets of something from Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter, Jamal Murray, somebody. You would think, right? You wouldn't think it would be that hard to find. Maybe somebody did, and I just didn't see it. But the fact that it doesn't seem like the Nuggets are holding some sort of a social media revolt, or at least thanking Michael Malone, tells me that the relationship between he and the locker room was strained. It doesn't mean they don't respect him. It doesn't mean that even on a human level, they don't like him. But where have the Nuggets players been to say, no, you're crazy? Because that's the reaction that you're getting outside of our corner of the world. How could they do this with just 3 games left? This is unbelievable. How, all this kind of stuff. And from mouthpieces of the organization and the players, you don't hear any dissenting opinions. You don't hear any outpouring or very little outpouring of support, which tells me they don't think this is the worst thing in the world. And maybe that it's not that shocking. Right? I don't even see the shock on social media from anybody within the Nuggets organization. So even if they weren't consulted on this, even if they had no heads up, they've been living in that locker room all season long, and they don't seem too surprised by this. And I think that is telling. The other thing that Josh Kroenke mentioned, the quote was, they want to squeeze as much juice out of the rest of the season. Or he said out of the regular season. This team, and you can extend that obviously to the postseason. He's talking about the postseason as well. But Josh Kroenke does not want this season to end like 2018, where the Nuggets are playing in a 1-game playoff win-or-go-home scenario, and they are staring that dead in the face. And he's saying, hey, if David Adelman, who they've named as the interim head coach, can give this team a spark, and we've seen this before in sports, you get a little bit of a lift after you make a coaching change for a variety of reasons. It could be something as serious as the players hated the coach, and I don't think that that's the case here. And it's something just as simple as the players realizing, like, wow, we got a guy fired. And we need to step up our game. Like the shock to the system that provides, we've seen teams get a bump. And first things first is that Josh Kroenke doesn't want to see his team in the play-in. Because let's be honest about it, that's a little embarrassing. Don't you think? You have the best player on planet Earth, and the best you can do is a spot in the play-in? And nobody wants to be in the play-in. Nobody wants, you want to play a 7-game series to determine your season. You don't want to play 2 games. And so to avoid that, the game I look at, all 3 the Nuggets could use, but the big one is Memphis. You do the math, even if the Nuggets lose tomorrow night to Sacramento, they can still jump back over Memphis and a couple of other teams perhaps by getting a win against the Grizzlies. So the one that they absolutely must get if they're going to avoid the play-in, they got to beat Memphis. Obviously, just to be safe, they should try to win all 3. But that's the big one. Got to get that one. If you lose that one, then you are in a really bad spot. But they're trying to avoid the play-in. Josh Kroenke might believe what he's saying. But I said it about Memphis, and I'll say it about the Denver Nuggets. I just don't know how you can reasonably expect that kind of a bump at this point in the season that will catapult you towards a title. I think there has to be some realization within the organization that they're not doing it this year. So if they're making this move in large part because they think by simply letting Michael Malone go that that everything's going to be fixed and they're going to be inspired and they're going to go to a title, like that is a level of belief that I don't have in anything in our natural world. Could we see this team play better basketball down the stretch? Sure. But 7-game series are the ultimate war of attrition. Okay? This will wear off, even if they get it. I don't know that they will. I could see it. But let's say they do, and they play their way out of the play-in. That feeling, that bump that you may get by putting David Adelman in charge is going to fade. There are just too many games that you're going to play. And the playoffs are too difficult. And then let's backtrack a little bit. This team is incredibly flawed. And their biggest issue is on the defensive end. And they just made David Adelman, their interim head coach, who is basically the offensive coordinator. You know his father. He's an offensive guy. So, and I like David Adelman, and I know that the organization thinks very highly of him, and he might get a legitimate opportunity to win this job. But if we're looking at the flaws of the Denver Nuggets, I don't know if David Adelman has the secret recipe that he's been sitting on this whole time or has been ignored by Michael Malone this whole time. I mean, that's really is what is at the heart of this. The Denver Nuggets are incredibly flawed. They're just flat out not good enough to win a title. And how much does that new coach bump get you when you are one of the worst defensive teams in the NBA, when you have one of the worst benches in the NBA, when your second best player is now hurt and has this mysterious injury that now used to be day-to-day and is now not day-to-day. With all the issues that the Denver Nuggets have, there is no new coach or firing coach bump that is going to override all of that. But could this team play a little bit better down the stretch? Sure. Does David Adelman have some ideas that maybe Michael Malone disagreed on that maybe will spark something in the Denver Nuggets? Yes. I think that's possible. But the idea that the juice that is being squeezed out of the rest of this season is maybe we go and win the whole dang thing. No. Stay out of the play-in and then take it from there. That's David Adelman's job. Get this team to win enough of the next 3 games to avoid a potential win-or-go-home scenario. And then you go to the playoffs and you get on the back of Nikola Jokic and say, save us, and that will get you somewhere. But it's not going to get you where you want to go. We've seen that. We've seen that movie. If he doesn't have a healthy Jamal Murray with him, Nikola Jokic can only do so much for an incredibly flawed roster. And Jamal Murray's health isn't even dependent on Michael Malone. David Adelman being the interim head coach, all of a sudden Jamal Murray's like, I think I'm healed. Not going to happen. There are real problems with this team. And that's why Calvin Booth. We're focusing on Michael Malone, and I think for good reason. It is the more shocking news of the day. I think we were all prepared for Calvin Booth to be gone, but we can't forget that he's also getting let go. And part of the reason he's getting let go is because of how this roster is comprised. David Adelman's not fixing all of that in 3 games before the end of the regular season. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the Nuggets letting both Calvin Booth and Michael Malone go. This is obviously going to be the prevailing conversation moving forward, but I have some early thoughts, if you'd like to hear them, on where the Nuggets may be going or where I think they should go. We could do that. And Nikola Jokic. Did he campaign for this? Was he consulted? And could this drive Nikola Jokic away from Denver? Talk about that as well here on Extra Sports 1300. In the studio, out of the studio, in the hallways. I will say with this news today that the Nuggets are letting both Michael Malone and Calvin Booth go, it has certainly registered at the higher end of the number of texts and tweets I have received, which is fine by me because that's really what I want to talk about. I don't want to talk about my birthday. I don't want to talk about... Oh, I kind of want to talk about the Minecraft movie, if anybody wants to engage me in that conversation, because that thing is... I don't know what's crazier, the Nuggets letting go Michael Malone and Calvin Booth, or the Minecraft movie. Another day. Stay on topic, Ryan. 719-247-1313 for your thoughts. Get to them in just a second. I want to bring the Nikola Jokic of it all into the conversation. Because when you have a multiple-time MVP, when you have a best player in the world, you don't make these kinds of moves without at least giving Nikola Jokic a heads up. I do not see Nikola Jokic going to Josh Kroenke and saying, you got to let Michael Malone go. That would defy everything that I believe about Nikola Jokic, that he would do what so many other NBA superstars have done and say, you need to fire this coach. He's never going to do that. What I think happened, it's common courtesy, I think, even if Nikola Jokic is not the type to want to be included, you're going to include him. Right? Not in the decision making. Josh Kroenke made this decision, as you heard earlier. He talked to Stan about it. Right? Not going to talk to Booth about it. Not going to talk to Michael Malone about it. So it's between the two of them. They decided this. But before the news breaks today, Josh Kroenke would have had to talk to Nikola Jokic. It is just, call it standard operating procedure. You have the face of your franchise. You cannot let him find out on social media. And and I would say it's got to be probably even a more involved discussion than just passing him in the hallway and saying, hey, just want to give you a heads up so you're not blindsided by this. We're going to do it. I think you sit Nikola Jokic down and you tell him what you're doing and why you're doing it. And there presents an opportunity. There presents an opportunity for Nikola Jokic to say no. And maybe that's not Nikola Jokic's style. But Nikola Jokic, I don't know if you've noticed this, he's not great at hiding his emotions. You know, one of the images that will linger in my mind is the Warriors game where he's sitting there on the bench and he's throwing his head back in just like almost disgust, like, what is happening to us? Nikola Jokic isn't a great poker player. Right? You may think because he's a man of few words and doesn't let, on the court, certainly he tells you with his words or with his body language how he's feeling. And I can't imagine that completely gets shut off behind the scenes. In front of a microphone, absolutely. Right? He's controlled there. He's measured. He doesn't get too high or too low. It's just the same all the time. But behind the scenes, when no cameras around, no press, no microphones, I gotta say, I gotta believe that it's somewhere in the middle. probably closer to the way he is at the microphone, but it's got to be somewhere in between. There's got to be a little bit of Nikola Jokic on the court that is behind the scenes. So do I think that Nikola Jokic campaigned for this? Absolutely not. Do I think that Josh Kroenke went to Nikola Jokic and said, do you want us to fire Michael Malone? No, I don't think he did that. But what I would imagine happened is that when Josh Kroenke sat down with the face of his franchise and explained everything to him, that would have been the moment where Nikola Jokic could have, in his own way, intimated to Josh Kroenke that he did not want this to happen for whatever reason. And he's been a big Michael Malone guy. The bond between the two of them has been strong. I can't imagine that Nikola Jokic, with this seismic of a move, would not feel at least empowered to be able to give Josh Kroenke a sideways glance to just at least in some way intimate that he didn't think that this was a good idea. So in that way, I think that Nikola Jokic may have had a chance to save Michael Malone's job. Now, maybe it came down to he doesn't feel like it's his place. But again, if he thought that this move would be terrible for the team, and I guess that's the way that I will put it. If he thought this move would be catastrophic, he would have done something. Wait till after the season, or I don't think this is a good idea, or gave him a look or something. I'm not saying that Nikola Jokic rubber stamped the idea of firing Michael Malone and said this is the best thing to happen to our organization ever. But to think that Nikola Jokic doesn't wield the power and that Nikola Jokic doesn't know he wields the power to be able in certain situations, well, in every situation, but that's the thing about having power. You only want to use it when it's most important. You don't want to use it at every turn and every little thing. You want to use it when it's the most important to you. This decision would have been a moment that Nikola Jokic could use the power he has within the organization to put a stop to this. At least till the end of the season. Right? Again, as we try to wrap marry the why and the why now together, like Nikola Jokic could have understood that maybe a change was necessary, but could have looked at the timing of it and said, I don't think this is good timing. Any aspect of this that he didn't like, he could have done something. He could have said something. Is this a ringing, endorsement of firing Michael Malone? No. I'm sure Nikola Jokic feels pretty bad about the whole thing. But if he thought it wasn't ultimately in the best interest of the basketball team, he would have done something. He would have said something. And I don't think Nikola Jokic feels powerless within the organization. So that's where I think Nikola Jokic comes into play here. And it's going to be, the fascination around tomorrow is going to be peak. Because you're going to hear from David Adelman. You're going to hear from Nikola Jokic. You're going to hear from maybe Jamal Murray and Aaron Gordon. You're going to hear from these players that have known no one in their Nuggets career but Michael Malone. Have won a championship with him. And for the first time in at least Jamal Murray's career, in Nikola Jokic's career, they're going to have to talk about the team firing their head coach. And then, oh, by the way, there's a basketball game, which is why we're going to hear from all of these people that the Nuggets probably should win. And seeing how they respond on the court with David Adelman roaming the sidelines rather than Michael Malone. Tomorrow's going to be remarkable. 719-247. 1313. Coming up next, want to get back to the text line. Of course, if you want to call up the show, you could do it. The same number you text in, 719-247-1313. Continuing on, Nuggets saying goodbye to both Michael Malone and Calvin Booth here on Extra Sports 1300. The Denver Nuggets have shocked the NBA world by putting an end to the tenures of both general manager Calvin Booth and head coach Michael Malone with 3 games left in the regular season. Let's get to your thoughts on the subject at 719-247-1313. From the 575, if they did not do it now, we know there was nothing positive potentially to happen. Now we have a chance. And that's the Josh Kroenke line of thinking. I think listening to Josh Kroenke, and it was just, I don't know if it's the whole interview with Vic Lombardi or just a piece. Altitude is airing a special tonight at 7 o'clock for it. But I think Josh Kroenke, somewhere within him, actually feels like maybe just getting rid of the toxic dynamic between Michael Malone and Calvin Booth, that all will be right. I hope that that's not the overwhelming feeling that he has, because I would like the executives of the pro sports teams that I cover to be grounded in reality. But I think there is some part of Josh Kroenke. I'll put it this way. It is a grand experiment that the Denver Nuggets are embarking on. And maybe this is another why answer to the question, why now? And you get to see, could it really just be because you have had an organization in turmoil for an entire year because the head coach and the general manager could not get on the same page about how to sustain success? Could just removing that dynamic be such a weight off the shoulders of the Denver Nuggets collectively that they all of a sudden snap back into the form from 2022 and run right through the Western Conference and on their way to the NBA Finals to take on the Boston Celtics? I wish I could be that optimistic. But from a practical standpoint, at least you can see. I mean, we can at least say that the Denver Nuggets right now, before this news today, or I should say, so not right now, because right now they don't have Michael Malone or Calvin Booth, but before this news was announced, I think we could all agree that the Denver Nuggets were not trending in a direction where they would win. I don't know that this puts them on that path, but perhaps where we're at in all of this is it can't get worse. So David Adelman takes over this job. The Denver Nuggets proceed to lose their next 3 games. They end up in the play-in. They get bounced in the play-in. Is that so wildly different than where you thought the Nuggets would end up yesterday? I don't think it's that much different. So the upside here, I'll at least grant Josh Kroenke this much. The upside is there. There's almost no downside. Was the team going to lose more? Is Russell Westbrook going to miss more layups at the end of games? Are they going to play worse defense? Watching this team right now, I don't know if any of that is possible. So they're actually, if you really drill down into it, there's not a lot of downside here because it's already really bad. And I think most people are of the mind that the Denver Nuggets were not going to go anywhere this season. I think the question just becomes, do you really believe that simply removing that dynamic from the organization is going to cure all of their ills? And I can't get there. I can't make that leap of faith. I have seen too much basketball from this team to think that simply making this move, as earth-shattering as it might feel, is exactly what they need. No, I think they need a change at general manager, somebody with a vision to improve this roster. And I think they need a change at coach. And it's not going to David Adelman. I mean, it is, to me, I think that the Nuggets, because let's give Michael Malone at least this amount of credit, it's going to be tough to do better than Michael Malone. Right? It's going to be tough to hire somebody with a resume that exceeds Michael Malone's. So I think with the Denver Nuggets, and I think it started with Josh Kroenke's interview with Vic Lombardi, I think that the Nuggets are going to start a campaign, and it will be on display tonight at 7 o'clock on Altitude. They will start to push this idea that the change of dynamic is everything. And I'm not saying they're trying to set it up so David Adelman will get the job. But they are going to push this, that it had to be done. It had to be done now. And there basically is not as much wrong with this team as you think there is. That is going to be the PR campaign moving forward. And maybe they believe it. But that's going to be the messaging. And that's what you're going to hear over and over and over again. We have what we need to win a title. This organization is not broken. It can be fixed. We just need to, tweak a couple things, and we need this toxicity to be out of our organization. That's what they're going to try and tell you. And I think part of it is protecting themselves against your high expectations for what the Denver Nuggets might do with these two positions. Because I will give you right now the dream scenario. There is someone right now who has built not just a championship team, has built a dynasty that is pulling his gorgeous head of hair out every day, trying to make heads or tails of the garbage that comes out of Stephen A. Smith's and Kendrick Perkins' mouth on a nightly basis. Bob Myers is right now employed by ESPN. And he has built a Warriors dynasty. You don't think he would be interested in this job? To be able to build around the best player in the league? As great as Steph Curry is, I don't know. Have we ever labeled Steph Curry the best player in the world? I mean, he's right there. But Jokic is there. And certainly Steph Curry is a legend in his own right. I'm not going to turn this into a minimizing what Steph Curry has done. But you don't think this appeals to him? And he's just sitting there. He's just sitting there on that ESPN set, his brain rotting like the rest of us who dare to watch ESPN's coverage of the NBA on a nightly basis. You bring in Bob Myers. And because today is so crazy, let me throw something crazy at you. Bob Myers gets the general manager job, gets to head up the organization in Denver. Meanwhile, his former employer, who took a significant swing this year to try and squeeze all the juice they could out of this Warrior dynasty by bringing in Jimmy Butler. Let's say they fall short at some point during the playoffs. Could Steve Kerr look at his tenure in Golden State and say, still want to coach, maybe I need to change the scenery? And oh, by the way, one of my very close, at least colleagues, if not friends, just took the job at a place that has Nikola Jokic on the roster. You heard Steve Kerr just the other day when the Nuggets played the Warriors that Steve Kerr said Kareem couldn't do some of the things that Nikola Jokic can do. So there's your dream scenario. And how dare anyone to top it? Because I know what you're thinking. Go get Phil Jackson off of whatever ranch in Montana he's currently inhabiting, but you still got to get a general manager. So from a GM head coach, how about this for a dream scenario for the Denver Nuggets? You bring in Bob Myers, and Bob Myers brings in Steve Kerr. And yes, there will have to be some convincing of the Golden State Warriors that, you know, to let Steve Kerr go. I don't know if there has to be draft pick compensation and all that. I'm not going, I'm just surfacing this thing right now. Let's just talk at the surface here. Bob Myers, realistic, isn't gainfully employed by any other NBA team, so I don't think that's a stretch. The Steve Kerr thing, I acknowledge, is a stretch. But with the respect that Steve Kerr has within that Golden State organization, and if Golden State falls short of whatever their goal or expectation might be, could Steve Kerr make a compelling case to Mike Dunleavy and the ownership in Golden State that this has run its course and it's time to part ways? It's a pretty wild scenario, don't you think? Going to be hard to beat that. But some of those maybe nothing will top that. But there will be a lot of scenarios. In fact, I have, where is it? I got sent this. It's these websites that do the hypothetical betting odds. You can't actually bet on this right now, but there's hypothetical odds, bookies.com. They do this all the time. I get emails from them constantly. Odds of the next Denver Nuggets head coach. They have the favorite as David Adelman at plus 400. So not a sure thing. Here are some other names on the list. How about Nate Oates, head coach at Alabama? How about, I'll do you one better, Dan Hurley. No three-peat to chase anymore. Is he looking at what happened in LA and saying, maybe I should have left? Well, here's another opportunity. You can coach Nikola Jokic in the NBA. So trust me, there are going to be some pretty out there ideas for where the Nuggets go from here. But it's born out of the idea that you have the best player in the world. I was talking to somebody about this earlier today. When is the last time that you can legitimately say that, forget the Denver Nuggets, a sports team in the state of Colorado had one of the best coaching jobs to ever come open? You are taking over a team with the game's best player, with a lot of pieces from a team that won a title just 2 years ago. Not saying that there isn't work to be done, but you have some pieces. They're not devoid of talent. You have Nikola Jokic. When is the last time any opening, Broncos, Nuggets, Rockies, Avalanche, Rapids, the only one I could think of was when Gary Kubiak left. That was a pretty desirable job. You didn't get Peyton Manning with that. Peyton Manning didn't come with that gig. And Peyton Manning was diminished in his final year in Denver, but perhaps when Shanahan got the job in Denver, would that be the closest comparison? I think it would be. But when you have Nikola Jokic, these jobs aren't, well, that job's not supposed to be open. Unless you're run out of town, how could you get fired? That's the thing. Nikola Jokic didn't call for Michael Malone to get fired, and yet the job opening is there. There are going to be a lot of big names that are going to be mentioned for this job. And I think what Josh Kroenke and what the Nuggets organization and everything attached to the Nuggets organization will do is make sure that you understand that it got so bad within that organization between Michael Malone and Calvin Booth that simply removing the two of them might be enough. So we don't need to swing for the fences. We don't need to get a huge name. Because just removing that dynamic is going to get us most of the way there. That's what they're going to say. You're going to hear it over and over and over again. I don't know that I believe that. I think it helps. I think it points them in the right direction, but make no mistake about it. The Nuggets cannot miss and cannot think small when trying to reclaim what they had just lost when it comes to the NBA championship. More on that coming up in a couple of minutes. Vinny Benedetto, by the way, covers the Nuggets for the Gazette. He will join me to give his thoughts on the matter here on Extra Sports 1300. Hello there. Welcome in or welcome back. Drive Time Sports on this Tuesday. Ryan Kaufman with you. There's a big story going on. It is going to be what's driving the show in mere moments. Vinny Benedetto, Nuggets beat writer for the Gazette, will drop by in less than 20 minutes. And, of course, your thoughts on the matter at 719-247-1313. You could call or text it in. I know a story is huge when I'm getting multiple calls. Don't mind the text line. Like the text line. Like interacting with you there. But it has to be a serious, big-time story to make those phone lines ring multiple times than they have throughout the show. And I love it all. I love all the interaction, no matter what way you get in touch with the program. So definitely keep your thoughts coming. In the meantime, let's just, in case you've been very busy, because I'll admit, I was grabbing lunch at Sprouts when the news broke. I didn't see it when it broke. So, we all lead busy lives. If you are wondering what we have been talking about today, here is not the stories that are driving the show, the story. Again, just story. Although it does involve two people. The Denver Nuggets today, with 3 games left in the regular season, mired in a 4-game losing streak, have said goodbye to both Michael Malone and Calvin Booth. If you want the semantics of it, the headline reads, Denver Nuggets relieve head coach Michael Malone of duties, will not extend Calvin Booth. This is from Josh Kroenke. It is with no pleasure that we announce that we have relieved Michael Malone of his head coaching duties effective immediately. David Adelman will assume our head coaching role for the remainder of the season. I'm paraphrasing a little bit. This decision was not made lightly and was evaluated very carefully, and we do it only with the intention of giving our group the best chance at competing for the 2025 NBA championship and delivering another title to Denver and our fans everywhere. So let's get into it. First, the why. The why among everything else, no matter what you want to pile on top of it, all of this starts with the disconnect that has permeated throughout the organization between Calvin Booth and Michael Malone. That always has to be mentioned. That is the foundation of the decision that was made today by Josh Kroenke. The fact that the two of them, this short of a time after winning an NBA title, cannot agree on the best path forward and cannot get in lockstep to try and give the Nuggets an opportunity. This is an organization in complete and utter disarray. And that is the saddest part of all, that this team has gone from the highest of heights to whatever they're at now in really not that much time. It really hasn't taken them that long. And without a significant piece retiring. Right? We've seen it before. Brady retires, you're going to be in a worse spot. Or if, John Elway retires, Broncos pretty bad position without that. Nope. They still have a lot of the players that won a title 2 years ago. And this is how far they have fallen in just 2 seasons' time. And to be able to do that, it can take nothing short of a complete top-to-bottom organizational failure. And it's mainly because these two guys can't get on the same page. Take whatever side you see fit to take. Are you Team Booth or are you Team Malone? But know that the fact that the two of them were at odds is behind all of this. So, you don't want that dynamic anymore. You want a head coach and a GM that are in lockstep, why don't you just fire one of them? Whatever the best idea, whoever has the best idea, they win, the other one is fired. Why fire them both? And why, let's be honest about it, why fire Michael Malone? Yeah, I don't know that there are a lot of people sticking up for the job that Calvin Booth has done. There are ranges, and I do think that Michael Malone did not do everything he can to help Calvin Booth, to make sure that Calvin Booth's players that he drafted, that he believes in, reach their potential. I don't think that he sabotaged them. I think it's just a matter of taste. Michael Malone doesn't like young players generally, and Calvin Booth loves them, believes they are the future. But why not just fire Booth? Well, because Michael Malone wasn't exactly doing everything he could to help the situation. Not just that he wasn't buying into the vision of Calvin Booth and was being combative about it, but look at this Nuggets team. Look at some of what ails them. Defense. Michael Malone came to Denver as a defensive coach, right? They had George Karl. George Karl was all offense, no defense. Josh Kroenke said, we got to go the other way. We got to find more of a defensive-minded head coach. That's what wins in the playoffs. And here's Michael Malone not being able to coach up this defensive team. And it's not all on Calvin Booth. It's not all on the personnel. I'm as big of a criticizer of the Denver Nuggets for letting Kentavious Caldwell-Pope go as anybody, but it can't be this. It can't be just that. So he can't get this team to play better defense when that is his specialty. He can't motivate this team to win big games down the stretch. He can't get this team to put forth the energy that is required to be able to rebound. And he hasn't figured out his bench. He hasn't figured out the right rotations. He leans more and more on Nikola Jokic. That's his big move every game is, if things are going bad, I'll put back in Nikola Jokic. Which is the very thing that cost the Denver Nuggets last year. So we could say that it might just be easier for the new general manager to get to pick his own guy. But there's more to it. Right? How combative is Michael Malone going to be with the next guy? And also, did Michael Malone do enough to save his job this season? I saw the signs of a coach that was losing grip on his team back in December. So the whys, they are plentiful, but they're easy. The why now is everything. Because that's what is truly shocking people today, is with 3 games left. And I think it's a combination of two things. One, it is a belief by Josh Kroenke that relationship between Michael Malone and Calvin Booth had gotten so bad and had affected his team so much that they actually have a chance at some success by removing that dynamic from the team. I think that's part of the thinking here. But I also think there's an aspect of this, and Josh Kroenke said this in his interview that he did with Vic Lombardi. He already made this decision. He didn't make this decision today. That was maybe the most telling thing about it, the interview he did with Vic Lombardi. And I haven't seen the thing in its entirety, and we'll see what else is there, because I'm sure nobody has seen all of it yet. He already made this decision. And if you have it in your mind that you are going to move on, why would you want the risk of the Denver Nuggets having some success with Michael Malone? Right? If you want to move on from him, if Nikola Jokic goes crazy in the postseason, or if they get a draw where they don't have Minnesota or OKC till later in the playoffs, now your job has gotten much. You made up your mind that you're going to fire this guy, and now you have to do it after a Western Conference Finals appearance. So you can't risk the Nuggets having success if you've already put it in your mind that this guy needs to go. That's the why now. And moving forward, the question will be, what's next? Well, I could tell you in the most immediate future, perhaps the Denver Nuggets could ride this, new coach bump that we see in other sports, and maybe they can stay out of the play-in. And that was a stated goal of Josh Kroenke at this point, is to stay out of the play-in. Maybe they could do that. To me, why all of this is so necessary, whether it be now or whether it be after the season, is that this team needs a critical eye and needs people in charge that have no relationship, no great affinity, no bond with anybody on this roster. If they look at it and say Jamal Murray, and the fact that their second best player is hurt all the time, and that's what's keeping them, the Nuggets, from sustaining success, and they need to move on from Jamal Murray, they need to be able to do that. If they say that the Michael Porter contract is putting this team in a vice and we need to move on from that, they need to be able to do that. I believe that those things need to happen. I'm not a home builder. I'm not an interior decorator. But imagine you have a house that needs to be torn down, but you like one thing. You like the kitchen. You got to tear everything else down and leave the kitchen because you love the kitchen. And then you got to build it back up around. Does that even happen in home building? I don't know. It's not my best metaphor. My point is, you have one guy that is untouchable. You have one guy that can do no wrong in this organization. Everyone else, you have to be able to evaluate. If you got to throw Christian Brown in a trade along with Michael Porter to get Kevin Durant, because that's the star you feel will put the Nuggets back over the top, you do it. If you feel like you need to trade Jamal Murray to get it done, you do it. Nikola Jokic is the only player safe on this roster. Everyone else, you have to evaluate it. I love Aaron Gordon, but if he's a piece that you can use to get you what you need, and I have a hard time believing that just because he's the one guy that night in and night out you can depend on to rebound and play defense. But if that's the path here, that's what it is. I think this organization needs massive changes and needs an overhaul, and it's going to be fascinating to watch. What fate do I believe will befall the Denver Nuggets? Sure, let's say they stay out of the play-in. They're not winning a title. They run into Minnesota or OKC at any point, they're done right there on the spot. This is a season that Josh Kroenke has to know in the back of his mind is not going where he hopes it will go. And nothing he does right now is going to change that. Only through an offseason of radical changes can the Nuggets get truly back on track and truly get back to the top. So do they get a bump to stay out of the play-in? They get to sell a full series of games at Ball Arena? I could see that. But to think that this is going to ultimately flip the switch for the Denver Nuggets to get to the NBA Finals, I don't see it. I don't see how they make it out of the minefield in the Western Conference with all of this going on. Take your thoughts at 719-247-1313. Coming up next, Vinny Benedetto from the Gazette will join me. How shocked was he about this? And what has he heard about why the Denver Nuggets have let Calvin Booth and Michael Malone go with 3 games left in the regular season? Welcome back, Drive Time Sports. The Denver Nuggets have relieved both Michael Malone. I'm not doing the semantics thing. They have fired both Michael Malone and Calvin Booth for all intents and purposes. I understand the aspect of Calvin Booth's contract. They're both gone. We could say that. Joining me now to discuss is the man that covers this basketball team and does a great job of it for the Gazette. He is Vinny Benedetto. Vinny, good to have you back on, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's been quite a day, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
It has been. Let me ask you first, how surprised were you when the news broke?
I was pretty surprised. I was touring an apartment and the phone just kept buzzing in my pocket, and I was trying really hard not to be rude. And then I realized what had happened, and I had to politely remove myself from the tour. So yeah, the timing of it all was what was most shocking to me. I think a lot of people who are around the team quite often, had an idea that. Depending on how this season ended, it was likely that either, Calvin Booth or Michael Malone would not be back next season. But to your point, effectively fire both of them today with 3 games left in the regular season was really surprising to me, especially, not giving Michael Malone the chance to see what he could do in these final 3 regular season games and whatever postseason run this team is going to have.
So in the moment, why didn't he get that chance?
That's a really good question. I think, things had to be so bad that the belief for Stan and Josh Kroenke was that it was going to be, almost impossible for Michael Malone to turn this thing around and, make the most of this season. And I'll say, being in the locker room after that loss Sunday night was kind of as dejected and kind of hopeless of a locker room as I've been in, for as long as I've covered the NBA the last few seasons. So I think the vibes just had to be so bad that they felt like there wasn't anything to be lost by making the move now.
The dynamic between he and Calvin Booth, as you've been able to observe, had it gotten any better? Had it gotten worse? I mean, I got to imagine that that's the backdrop of everything, is that dynamic between the two of them. What have you observed when it comes to how Calvin Booth and Michael Malone have worked together after it was kind of a big thing this offseason that they needed to get on the same page?
Yeah, I think it's been a really tricky relationship the last couple of years, just coming down to the difference of opinion on how you supplement the roster around a guy like Nikola Jokic. Given the team's constraints with the CBA, Calvin Booth thought it was best to fill it out with younger, more promising guys, and I think Malone always preferred to have trusted vets, even if that means some of these guys are a little bit past their prime. And I think just over the course of this season, it's been a really challenging season on a lot of fronts, and I think the relationship kind of just soured to the point where Malone felt like he didn't have a lot of options when it came to improving the on-court product. And the one time we heard from Calvin Booth in a press conference this season, he made some comments about how they're utilizing certain guys and maybe a difference of opinion. The one that's coming to mind is how they've used Zeke Naji. Malone has used him as a backup center for most of the last few years. And, there was a stretch around the trade deadline where Zeke was playing pretty well at a power forward. And, Calvin noted that in his press conference. So I think, it's been tricky for a few years, but I think the challenges of this season have kind of deepened the divide to the point where it was, sides were being drawn.
Vinny Benedetto, Nuggets beat writer for the Gazette, my guest. Josh Kroenke said in his interview that he just did with Vic Lombardi that they're trying to squeeze as much juice out of the regular season as they can. So how much following this team and analyzing this team the way that you do, how much of their ills can be cured by simply getting this dynamic out. I mean, does it go beyond the human element to real X's and O's basketball stuff that is preventing the Denver Nuggets from looking like a championship contender?
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it to me. It's not a whole lot of time, and it doesn't feel like a very fair circumstance for David Adelman to get his audition. And David Adelman has kind of ran the offense the last few years, and Ryan Saunders has been the guy defensively. And so, I would assume both of those guys kind of stay and, maintain their current roles. And to have 3 games where they're going to have to kind of empty the tank if they want any hope of, securing home court advantage in the first round, and then to go right into what's going to be a really tough playoff series. It doesn't feel like there's, really even much time if they wanted to change things up.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't feel like there's enough time for them to get to the point where they've installed new stuff and they feel, confident throwing it out there in a meaningful game. So it does feel like there's not, much to squeeze out of the remainder of this season, unfortunately, for Nuggets fans.
Where do you think Nikola Jokic comes in on all of this? Was he somewhere on the spectrum of campaigning for Michael Malone to be fired to he found out on social media like the rest of us? Where do you think he is on that continuum?
I think he's somewhere around the middle. I'm not going to pretend to know him well, but he just has never struck me as the type of guy who would interfere in these decisions. I think he sees kind of a clear delineation of, my job is to play basketball for this team and to play the best basketball I can. The Kroenke's job is to make those decisions. And I mean, it is still the modern NBA. I have to imagine Stan Kroenke ran this by Nikola and at least gave him the opportunity to voice any strong objections, just because of his value to the franchise. If Joker's unhappy, nothing good is going to happen for the Nuggets. So I have to imagine he was at least informed and probably consulted to an extent before the decision was made. And certainly he had to be aware before it was announced. But I don't think he would ever, go to the Kroenkes and say, hey, listen, we've got to talk about this.
Do you know, in talking to Josh Kroenke in the past, did he like the roster that Calvin Booth had put together? I mean, did he think that this was a championship roster?
Yeah, I think that has been the expectation from a bunch of different parties. And some of this comes down to, a bit of tough luck in that, they use some assets to move up to draft a guy like Deron Holmes, who hasn't played at all this year. Having to part with 3 second-round picks to move Reggie Jackson to create space for Russell Westbrook kind of hamstrings what they were able to do at this trade deadline. So I think, the making this a championship contending team has certainly been made more difficult by some things that are out of their control. But I think, everybody's been on the same page that championship contention at a minimum is the expectation. And that's just, winning a championship is great, but it also comes with increased pressure over the next couple of years. And, Michael Malone isn't the first championship winning coach to be out of a job, 2 or 3 years later. So I think it's kind of the nature of the beast at this point, but I think all parties were on the same page that, being in contention was the expectation.
Yeah, you could just look to the state of Wisconsin to see a similar situation in which a championship team started to unravel a little bit, and they made some significant changes, multiple significant changes. Vinny Benedetto, my guest. Whatever they do or do not do the rest of the season in the playoffs, I think that the availability and the form that Jamal Murray is in will play a large role in that. what is going on with this injury that was day to day and is now not day to day?
Yeah, that's a good question. We didn't get much of a full answer outside of that. It went from day to day to something more serious to the hope that that he's going to be available for the start of whatever Denver's postseason is. I don't want to make too big of an assumption, but it's a situation where he was, trying to test it out one day and maybe aggravated it. Feels like a real possibility, but I don't want to go too far down that train of thought without knowing that for a fact. But it is certainly an interesting progression from, the game he injured it. He finished that game, and then for him to, it never sounded like it was going to be a prolonged absence. He's been, questionable on the injury reports the last week or so. It's not like he's, been ruled out the day before. So it is an interesting kind of timeline and a very concerning timeline for this point of the season.
It certainly is. And whether David Adelman is the right guy or anything, I don't know if the Nuggets can do much without playoff Jamal emerging once again this season. But we'll all follow along. Never a dull day in the life of Vinny Benedetto, but things getting more interesting here at the stretch run of the year. Vinny, really appreciate the time. Did you get the apartment, or are you still thinking about the apartment, or how did that all turn out today because you got sidetracked?
Yeah, I think that bridge with that specific apartment may be burned as I just kind of I tried really hard to be polite, but within 10 or 15 seconds, I was like, I'm sorry, I've got to go.
Yeah.
And we hadn't really even made it to the, what do you do for a living part of the tour? It was, good news is it's Denver and there are plenty of apartments and I should be all right. But, that one, I think we've crossed off the list.
All right. Well, that's all right. That's the right attitude to have. Plenty of apartments in the great city of Denver. Vinny, appreciate it. We'll be certainly following your work and following you on social media at Benedetto as well. Appreciate it, bud.
Absolutely. Have a good one, Ryan.
Yeah, you too, Vinny. That's Vinny Benedetto, Nuggets beat writer for both the Denver and Colorado Springs editions of the Gazette. Does a fantastic job of covering the Denver Nuggets and was apparently just on JR Sport Brief, the show that we join in progress right after I am done. So he's going to be a busy man and really appreciate him taking some time to lend his insight into all of this. We got one more segment today, and then we'll be back tomorrow. And there's a whole host of other topics surrounding this move today that we're going to get into on tomorrow's show. But one more segment, bring me your thoughts, and I will get to them coming up next here on Extra Sports 1300. Crazy day here with the Nuggets news, but wanted to carve out some time to let you know about a very cool event that is going on in our backyard that benefits a terrific organization. It is Frontline to Field, the foundation, and they're hosting a baseball camp, a clinic this weekend in Peyton. So anybody that is looking out for those of us on the or those of us from the Eastern Plains always has a special spot in my heart, and what makes my next guest good to teach your kids more about baseball. He was paid to play the sport. So joining me now to discuss this fantastic event and everything that comes along with Frontline to Field, he is Jason Stanford. Jason, pleasure to have you today. How are you?
Ryan, it's so good to be on the air with you, and excited for this weekend, especially being in your neck of the woods, coming out from Ohio, leaving snow, and coming to the sun.
Leaving snow to just miss snow here. So you have picked the perfect week to be out here. Well, let's talk about Frontline to Field Foundation. What is it that you guys do?
So Frontline to Field Foundation, we are a nonprofit headquartered in Ohio, where I live, and then we just opened up our chapter in Colorado at the start of March, and we help with military personnel, veteran personnel, first responder, and youth athletes on the mental health awareness side. So we help with programming. So if there's families out there that are in need, we're there for them, whether it's a youth athlete that is struggling to compete. Maybe mom and dad are struggling to have their player, grasp the concept of how to compete at a high level or be consistent. We're there for them. And then from the military and first responder side, they deal with tragedy on a regular occurrence. What can we do to help them facilitate their everyday life to get it more regularly? And that's why we have programming out there for them.
And obviously it's, helping out veterans, the military. I mean, who isn't in favor of that? Who doesn't feel strongly about that? But I'm curious, obviously the athletes, young athletes, being a former young athlete yourself, obviously that is a group of people that you certainly care a lot about. But is there something in your life, a family member or something that made you want to start this foundation and to have it specifically support military and veterans?
Very much so. So I grew up in Arizona. I grew up in Tucson. And we're fortunate enough to have a chapter down there as well. And both my grandfathers actually were in the military for a long time. My one that I know for a fact served in World War II. My other one also served there as well. My one grandfather that I was very, very close with was on Normandy. I mean, he was right there on the beaches. And, the craziness behind it is my girlfriend is also involved in our organization. She's the executive director. Her grandfather was also in Normandy on the beaches. We think that our grandfathers crossed paths at some point because they were both stationed in Hawaii. So we're looking into that. But then also currently, I have multiple cousins in the Tucson area that are police officers. I have SWAT team members. My one cousin works for Raytheon and helps, with the defense weaponry and things like that. So, anytime that we look at things like this, my main objective and focus is how can we help, the ones that are protecting us daily. And so we looked at, why coming out to Colorado and starting this chapter was because there's people out there that need our help. The VA is swamped and overwhelmed at times, and us little nonprofits, can go a long way to help. And we have a great donor base already that has helped facilitate our events as well as giving back. And we're excited for this weekend to host our first event ever in Colorado in Peyton. And it's right down the street from you guys, and with having the Air Force Academy right there, this is going to be a great way to kind of kickstart what we're trying to accomplish there.
Jason Sanford, my guest. Frontline to Field Foundation, the spring baseball camp this weekend, April 12th and 13th. I'm guessing at Peyton High School. Yeah.
It is actually at the Little League fields there in Peyton.
Oh, okay. Peyton, they add a new structure in Peyton every day. So,
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, if people want information about our event this weekend, we do have a Facebook page, Frontline to Field, a Facebook page. We're working on a website right now. We are still very fresh. We're very new. We started the organization in October, but on our Facebook page, it does have the event information. It is $175 for the 3 hours for 2 days. So your player, whether it's a boy or a girl, there is baseball players that are girls now. That we're very excited about as well. And 3 hours on Saturday from 9 to 12, 3 hours on Sunday from 9 to 12. And all the proceeds that we raise this weekend are going right back to either responders or military in the area, so we're keeping it close and local.
That's awesome. And so important these days to know that the organizations that you are supporting are impacting the community that you live in, and certainly Frontline to Field Foundation is doing exactly that. The address is 13550 Bradshaw Road in Peyton, but as Jason said, obviously Frontline to Field on Facebook. We posted on all of our platforms at Extra Sports 1300 a flyer that you can use, and the email address, a bunch of information is on there. And hey, it's not every day that you can have your kid coached up by somebody that did the sport at the highest level, and Jason has. So great opportunity for that. And then obviously, more importantly, the people that you are supporting and the organization that you are supporting with this. Did I miss anything, Jason, before I let you get on with your day? And I certainly do appreciate you carving out some time for me.
No, I think we hit all the points. Like I said, I'm excited to get out there. We're going to finish up the week. Next week, we're going to stick around town in southern Colorado, and then also head up to Denver and go see a Rockies game. It'll actually be my first time being at Coors Field. In 2007. I was part of the team with the Cleveland Indians at the time, and we were one game away from the World Series, so we would have been playing the Colorado Rockies. Unfortunately, we lost out to the Boston Red Sox, being up 3-1. And I think you guys all remember what happened. The Red Sox swept the Rockies. But no, any time that we can get back, and I can use my platform as being a former Major League Baseball player, is very exciting for myself. And then also, with my girlfriend being involved, her grandfather and father both being in the military, we're looking at different avenues of how to help the masses, do what they need.
Well, and you and I, working together, you being on this show, all that kind of stuff, we're just getting started up with that. So I'm looking forward to doing more of this stuff with you, Jason. But in the meantime, I will again point people to the Frontline to Field Facebook or our social media platforms as a jumping off point to get all the information you need for the spring baseball camp for Frontline to Field this April 12th and 13th, Saturday and Sunday, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. in Peyton, ages 7 to 12, boys and girls. Jason, really appreciate the time and look forward to the next time you and I get a chat.
Ryan, thank you so much. And hey, go Nuggets, right? I mean, they're on fire right now. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Really appreciate it, bud. Safe travels out here. You bet. That's Jason Stanford, former Major League pitcher, runs along with his girlfriend running the Frontline to Field Foundation. Very cool organization, just getting in on the ground floor. So obviously to have events like this be successful is what really drives organizations like that. So if you have a child that is into baseball, wanting to get ready for the season, certainly great. I mean, former major leaguer. coaching your kids. Pretty cool stuff there. So Frontline to Field, you can find them on Facebook. And also if you go to our social media platforms, you can find information on it as well. In the time we have remaining, I want to get to your thoughts on the news of the day. The Denver Nuggets firing Michael Malone, letting Calvin Booth go ahead and walk out as well, and doing it with just 3 games left in the regular season. Tom says Malone was preaching defense every opportunity he had. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. One of my favorite idioms, by the way. If guys aren't willing to play D, what are you going to do? Give them players that are willing to play defense. I agree with you about the young players. You got to give them time to develop, but I don't think that's a fireable offense. Give them a couple of guys that can play defense, a 3-point shooter, a legit one, and an actual backup center. You got to have the right ingredients to win. And I think what you I think you further what makes today just such I don't know that this is a good day for the Nuggets organization. I don't know that this is a day to be celebrated, because this team has essentially squandered or started to squander. They are heading down the road of squandering a championship window with the best player in the league. So I have to give Josh Kroenke credit on this for making the move. And this is something that I have been pointing out a lot lately, but throughout this season, that I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know if Michael Malone is the right guy moving forward. So I do have to give Josh Kroenke credit for being decisive and making the decision, and I think making a decision that could set the Nuggets back on track. And I'll get more into this tomorrow, but if he thinks that all he needs to do is just get the vibes back up at Ball Arena, I think he is mistaken. I think he is in a Western Conference right now where OKC has emerged, and essentially Oklahoma City can do anything they want to do with their roster moving forward. Right? With the number of draft picks they got, they can do any number of things to make the team that's already lapped the field in the West even better moving forward. They can create a pipeline of talent into their organization for years to come. You already have the Minnesota Timberwolves that you have not beaten in 6 consecutive games. And I wonder if you can beat this team as currently constructed. You now have the Golden State Warriors, who made a move and got Jimmy Butler. And then obviously there's that team in Los Angeles that now has another top 5 player in the world to pair with their other top 5 player in the world. I think the rest of the West, as the Nuggets have lost talent, and Josh Kroenke has a part to play. If he was willing to go in the luxury tax threshold, this roster might look a little bit different in the ways that they need to look different in order to succeed. So Josh Kroenke is not blameless in all of this. I don't think anybody is, except probably Nikola Jokic. Kind of put that in there. But I think the players as a group, I don't want to keep singling out Nikola Jokic, the players as a collective, Michael Malone, the coach, Calvin Booth, the general manager, and Josh Kroenke, the whatever you want to call him, vice president of KSE, the president of the Nuggets, owner, governor, whatever you want to call him. I think everybody made missteps after the Nuggets beat the Heat at Ball Arena. I think every level of this organization misstepped along the way. Some more than others, but they all did to get the Nuggets to this dire situation they find themselves in. So dire that they had to completely clean house when it comes to their head coach and their general manager. But I don't think that simply doing what they did today is going to be enough. I think this team needs a real hard look by a trained set of eyes that does not have, the feelings from 2 years ago and loves the warrior that Jamal Murray has been and understands, Michael Porter and how great it was that the Denver Nuggets were able to invest in him, and a guy that no one thought would be long for the league is now the player that Michael Malone, all of this, Michael Porter, I should say, that all of that, somebody needs to come in who is cold and calculated and will assess this roster, because I don't think it is good enough. And I think every day there is a new team in the Western Conference that pops up and you go, if they're not better than the Nuggets now, you could certainly see the path to how they are. Right? We saw Minnesota, then the rise of OKC, then the Lakers get Luka, then the Warriors get Jimmy Butler. Look at the Houston Rockets. They are in line to make a big splash this offseason. Like, the Nuggets keep losing talent and everyone keeps gaining it, and the idea that all they need to do is remove a toxic relationship from the building, it's not going to be enough. And I hope that's not what Josh Kroenke thinks is going to be enough. I have to leave it there. I've plumb ran out of time, but we're going to continue the conversation tomorrow, shift to try to move it forward a little bit into David Adelman's first game. Our expectations, do we expect him to play more of the young guys? Or do we think that David Adelman is going to, play Russell Westbrook and play DeAndre Jordan because that was the best chance for the Nuggets to win? It will be fascinating tomorrow night to see how different this team plays and how different they look out on the court, even by just making a change at head coach. Appreciate your patronage, your interaction today was awesome. From that standpoint, thanks to Vinny Benedetto and Jason Stanford for being my guests. We'll reconvene tomorrow at 3. Don't forget, Avs. Remember the Avs? They still exist. They're playing pretty well. They don't need to fire their coach or their general manager. Although I kind of thought for a minute there they might have needed to. They play Vegas tonight. And you can hear that game here on Extra Sports 1300.